Okay, welcome everyone to Progressive Discussions. I'm glad you followed the bouncing ball, and I cannot overemphasize that. The bouncing ball to that different theme song. And I'm going to drink Sweet Baby Jesus peanut butter, chocolate, even better yet, chocolate peanut butter stout, and it really does smell and taste like the words I mentioned. All right. I know this is not a craft beer review, but I wanted to get something special. And, well, I'll have to wait for the head to come down. But it does really have a chocolate and peanut butter aroma. Very aromatic. What does it mean when some of those people say, I detect a crackery breadiness? Are they talking about the malt? What is this crackery breadiness to? I don't know.
It's usually the yeast.
The yeast. Well, they're putting it in layman's terms, right? I want to show everyone what happens when you turn 60 years old. You start getting this shit in the mail for monuments. I got this in the mail. I go, what the fuck? Mausoleums, monuments. They can't wait to turn you into fertilizer when you reach a certain age. You know, you're like, it's like they're kind of rushing you to the grave.
Gotta love capitalism.
There you go. Look at this. Monuments. I'm supposed to be happy about life insurance and monuments and all this. I'm supposed to make me enthusiastic when I get this in the mail. Capitalism. Even when even when you're halfway in a grave, they're ready to stick you there. You know,
right.
On a banana peel, 1 foot in the grave. Now, I read an article a long time ago, and I just thought of that since 1776, only about 10% of the American population has ever been upwardly mobile. I'm not sure how accurate that is, but I'm willing to believe not too many people were upwardly mobile with this rigged system we have.
Okay, so what are they defining as upwardly mobile? Because I'm not really understanding.
Like I guess, what is that? I think it meant like your standard of living never was elevated. Like I guess when you reached adulthood, you never advanced from your original standard of living, like as opposed to someone, born with a silver spoon in their mouth,
right?
Compared to a regular schmuck, a regular working stiff. I mean, between the founding fathers and the 19th century, where there were no social programs, there were no breaks for the lower 98%. If you were poor, you just simply perished. That's pretty much how it was until FDR got in there and started doing good things. I mean, the Industrial Revolution was a big minus because people left family-owned farms and they didn't produce their food and their living anymore. They relied on the man, working for the man.
Mm-hmm.
The man meaning the demons like J.P. Morgan, so on and so forth, Carnegie, Cornelius Vanderbilt. So that's probably what it really meant, an elevation of the standard of living. But I do apologize because I never introduced us. I'm James P. Madonna, and this is my co-host, Gary W. Owens, originally from Virginia, now residing in the state of Tennessee.
Yep.
I'm in northeastern New Jersey. And here we are. Progressive discussions after hours. No holds barred. We're even worse at this time.
Well, this is kind of like midday for me because I usually don't get up to like 3 or 4 in the afternoon as is anyway. So this is...
Well, you're nocturnal like I.
Yeah, I'm nocturnal. Getting back to what you're talking about. 10%, that might be right. I don't know. I know I was fortunate enough to do that because back when my dad died in 2016, you know, I was living with my mom. I was in college, and I was living with her, working my job at Walmart and going to college. In a lot of ways, I was just living. I wasn't really, living life. I was just kind of existing, And when my dad died, that's when everything changed. Because my dad left everything to me, and he left me insurance money that my mom and my sister tried to fraud me out of. But I took him to court and backed him down. And with what insurance money my dad left me, I bought a house. Granted, it's nothing like gourmet or exquisite. It's a nice manufactured home in a working class neighborhood that I got for a really good deal, and I owe this much of a mortgage on it.
Yeah, because you're not handing over a big hunk of money to some landlord.
Exactly.
Of course.
And I can honestly say that I was one of those fortunate ones that actually became upwardly mobile, that my standard of living increased. While although I don't have to worry about a mortgage or a car payment because what vehicles we have are paid for, I mean, I still got to worry about bills, but we're making ends meet with the way things are, but we really just don't have enough money for fun money. Everything's just going towards our bills and groceries. We really have no money for fun money, and if we do, we have to scrimp and scringe and save what we can, so that way, we do have it.
You mean like surplus cash, where you say, well, I'm saving money to go on an all-inclusive resort with my significant other. I'm saving for it, and I got this saving, that savings, I'm doing it. There is no surplus cash per se. It's all going to this racketeering high cost of living that we have here in the United States.
Exactly. So it's like, I'm trying to think of the best way to describe it. If anything, that 10% figure is, that might be right. It might be lower. It might be higher. But what really can you expect in a capitalistic system? I mean, granted, yeah, I was lucky, but unlike what most lucky people do, I want to share wealth. I want people to achieve what I have achieved. And that's where there's a big radical difference between the bourgeoisie and the proletariat, not only here in the United States, but the rest of the world. So it's like, yeah, I came into money, and it was great to have that money, but, I want other people to have that as well.
Yeah.
And I don't really foresee that happening under a capitalistic system.
No, it's just not set up for the little guy. I mean, at one time, if you wanted to sell things out of the trunk of your car or go down your local main street with a push cart and sell something, you did not have extremely high permit fees to have the push cart. Now you're chased out of your local areas. You can't really start from rock bottom anymore. They won't let you. The system won't allow you to start from rock bottom, and it's unfortunate because Main Street, the middle class, small businesses, that's the backbone of the American economy, and they are the #1 consumers of the American economy. But they have all the tax burden.
Yeah.
Whereas the top 2% are on a tax vacation. Thank you, Ronald Reagan, for that. But
thanks,
like now, getting back to the local news about the mainstream media making a big stink about Bernie Sanders' book.
Right.
Now, he did reveal his tax returns going way back, which was very nice of him to do that. And he did make a lot of money on that book. But in democratic socialism, if you do make a ton of money on something, you should pay your fair share in taxes, which I believe he would do. Now, they're making a big stink about it because he has been demonizing the top 2%. But then again, look who's controlling the media, who owns the media, the top 1%. So, you know, as long as he pays his fair share in taxes, like what I would do is I would show that I'm paying my fair share in taxes on every penny I ever earn, just to prove a point, because he's a senator and he's running for president. But really nitpicking about his book. I think he was number 3 New York Times bestseller list or something. Did really well, but that's not his fault. I mean, he's a popular guy. But if he does that, first step, he showed his tax returns. Second step, pay your fair share in taxes, and then turn around and say, okay, everyone in Washington, including the orange demon, do what I do. Do what I did. I'm sorry.
Right.
You know, but now the theme of the show. Now, the floor is all yours.
All right, hang on just 1 second. I'm typing something.
I am a bigoted nationalist. I want to close all borders. Every molecule of American coastline will be closed. All the evangelicals. Oh, what's this deal in Ohio? That if a woman has a miscarriage, she can be imprisoned?
Oh, good Lord.
This
goes to show you the idiocy as well as the lunacy of the right wing, because this just shows you just how anti-science these conservatives really are, especially these extremely radical conservatives who push through this idea that, you know, abortion, that if a woman has an abortion, she should have punishment like this. Now, let me just make something very abundantly clear on this. A woman can have a miscarriage and it not even be her fault. It could be just, a man and a woman reproduce or they have sex and the eggs just don't take for some reason. It could be a genetic defect or just that particular egg decided not to stick or, some with ovulation, et cetera, et cetera. But yet a woman can have an abortion that way. So that just goes to show you that this idea is extremely anti-science. Yeah. So by that logic, any woman who has had a period is potentially a serial killer. So I view this as an extreme attack on women. So a man who masturbates is murdering spermatozoa or spermatozoon, which is one spermatozoa. I mean, how far does this go? A fertilized egg is just a potential life. Like an acorn is to an oak tree. That's all it is. It's crazy. And Rick Santorum, you know what he did? Rick Santorum, he brought his wife had a miscarriage, brought it home in formaldehyde, and showed the kids and says, "This could have been your brother." What a sick motherfucker that is. That is sick. I'm sorry, but that is fucking sick. These are not real Christians. These are cultists. These are really whack jobs that they would know the God of the Bible if it bit them on the tip of their nose. I mean, these are like what about the Baptist church where they're dancing in the aisle with rattlesnakes? They're taking up serpents, and the guy's dancing with the live rattlesnake. It bites his wife. She dies from the venom, and and they're still doing it. They're still doing services with live rattlesnakes. Good old religion, that old-timey religion. America's big theatrical prop. Good enough for me. Even though I'm a fucking hypocrite.
But anyway,
The idiocy of these radical conservatives really just, I'm not surprised, because when you're this idiotic and this anti-science, really nothing should come across as a surprise. It really should not, because if they knew even the slightest little bit of science, they would know that a woman can have a natural abortion. So if they knew that, they would not be pushing through this radical attack against women. But that also goes to show you, not only is this a radical attack against women, this also just goes to show you just how sexist these radical conservatives can be. I mean, conservatives are sexist, no doubt, but to this extent, this just goes to show you the more radical ones are becoming the alphas and the more dominant in the conservative ideology.
Well, conservatives are talking about that bigotry and singling groups of people out, specific groups. They never complain about European immigrants, like Donald Trump's girlfriends. It's always people of color south of the border that they have a problem with. We have tons of Polish immigrants in the next town over.
Mm-hmm.
They don't bother anybody. They're all nice people, but they're recently from Poland, because some of them speak very little English, if any.
Right.
But they're immigrants just the same. But everything is about brown people, brown-skinned people south of the border when it comes to Republicans. So there's a pattern with Republicans. It's not difficult to predict them and to figure them out. They're really very obvious. Yeah.
I'm glad you brought this up, because this actually ties into a topic we were going to discuss later, but we can go ahead and touch up on this now. If they really, really don't want any kind of immigrants coming into this country, how about we leave these other fucking countries alone? Like, Jesus. As you were talking about in the previous show, we have over 800 military bases across the world. The sun never sets on the American empire. And look at what all we do to other countries, how we can evolve with other countries that don't necessarily toe the line with us. We go in, we bomb them, we kill them, we destroy their government, we destroy their infrastructure, and we topple everything that they hold dear and true. And where are these people really going to go? It's like they force people to come here to America, but when they arrive at the gates of the empire, they get turned away.
You notice America's military influence always seems to be in the oil-rich parts of the world.
Mm-hmm.
It's never like, look at all the atrocities happening in African countries, but you don't see anything going on there, to any serious degree. But it's always the oil-rich parts of the world that or opium-rich, to be sarcastic.
Yeah. American imperialism recognizes no bounds. It really does not, because, like I was telling you, if we do that, should we really be dumbfounded whenever these immigrants and these refugees come to our borders wanting in, because there's really nowhere else for them to go? I mean, if you want them to stay in your country, don't do things like toppling their government, destroying their infrastructure, going in and dropping bombs on them, killing them, etc., etc. They won't come here. They'll stay in their fucking country. But I'm glad that, the conservatives make that so abundantly apparent. But liberals want to kind of just sweep that under the rug, because liberals are just as guilty as conservatives in this regard. Neoliberalism is this ideology that primarily affects the conservatives. Oh, conservatives, yeah, I'm sorry. I threw the old dirty word of liberalism into your ideology. Ooh, I'm so evil and horrible about it. But yet, liberals are just as guilty. That's what the current stage of American imperialism is neoliberalism. Yeah, they'll go in and maybe try to show that capitalism is not as bad as what people want to portray it as. They'll try to put a smiley face on it, but deep down below that smiley face, there's that devil face emoji.
Yeah, the devil's face of the politician that looks like a deer staring at headlights and voices like nails across the chalkboard. I'm talking about Nancy Pelosi with the recent interview putting down true progressives in the Democratic Party, but that sure exposes who she represents. I think the oligarch is pulling her puppet strings.
Right.
Nancy, I could never stand her, but
I can't stand her either.
Yeah, she is an establishment, not just a centrist. She's an establishment, paid off demon-crat, and she I think she kept on nagging to be Speaker of the House for the second time because maybe the oligarch wanted to send her in there to make sure that the Democratic Party did not become too progressive. Maybe, I don't know, but there's something up with her. That interview, I just hope they don't capitulate the true progressives that happen to be the freshman Democrats that were elected. I hope they don't, you know.
I mean, I really don't consider Ocasio-Cortez to really be a progressive because, if anything, she's really just a radical liberal, just like all these so-called progressives and these so-called socialists and communists here in the United States. Like, really here in the United States, there's not really any true progressives. There's not really any true socialists or true communists. Well, like, I do consider myself a true socialist, but yet I'm so few and far in between.
Now, a populist, the definition of a populist, would that be just as synonymous with a true progressive?
I wouldn't really consider that to really be progressive because a populist ideology really is not exclusive to progressives or the left in general. I mean, a rightist can be a populist. Look at Donald Trump. He was a populist in a certain regard, and look, he fucking got elected.
Yeah, well, also there were a lot of, even if everybody did vote, I know that there would have been a certain degree of rigging going on in 2016, but it would have helped really if everybody got their asses to the polls.
To be honest, I know we were talking about this. I don't think if we would have voted in 2016, it really would have made that much of a difference. Because when you engage in bourgeois parliamentarism, nothing really changes. You know, they'll put on this front to get your vote, but yet once you actually go out there and get your asses to the polls, once the asses of the masses get their asses to the polls and vote, then they're going to see exactly what they really voted for. It doesn't really matter whether you would have voted for Bernie, whether you would have voted for Trump, or whether you would have voted for Clinton. The imperialistic wars of the United States would not have changed. In fact, probably under Hillary Clinton, they would have gotten a lot worse. Because whether Hillary Clinton wants to admit it or not, she is a liberal war hawk. That's one reason why liberalism is also a very dangerous ideology. In fact, more dangerous than conservatism is liberals have so much unpredictability to them. You really honestly never know what a liberal is really thinking.
I think neoliberals are the ones that invented that insane all-gender restrooms at universities. I remember when they tried that. Oh yeah, that's a perverse paradise. If I ever heard one.
I wouldn't say that. I mean, I think you're confusing certain terminologies because neoliberalism is an ideology all on its own that was actually invented by Reagan and his gang and what followed afterwards. That's not really the work of neoliberalism in that regard. What you're really thinking about is really radical liberalism, because that's the whole entire basis of liberalism is just anything and everything goes. You know, ethics, morality, etc. You know, that doesn't really matter when it comes to
like a Woodstock reenactment. You know, just like you said, everything and anything goes. But that didn't last long. I knew that wouldn't.
To throw out a Lenin quote, yeah, it's typical for a liberal to talk about democracy, but democracy for what class?
Yeah, well, like radical liberalism would be like the man-hating feminists, the Gloria Steinems of the world, people who demand special treatment. Back in the day, I was told I did not qualify for certain entrepreneurial or job training or business startup programs because I was white and Caucasian. I mean, I was Caucasian and male. A Caucasian male actually could not apply for certain programs.
Why am I not surprised?
In New Jersey. I said, oh, really? So if I was a woman of color, especially a single parent woman of color, is what you're saying is I can apply for all the above? And they said, yes. I go, okay, now I'm understanding it. So I have to take a back seat based on gender and race. But if other people have to take a back seat, then you have demonstrations and it's in the media.
Mm-hmm.
I see how that works.
Right. But while we're still on this topic, I was telling you, liberals in a lot of ways are much more dangerous than conservatives, because a conservative is pretty much going to put their ideology right there in your face, whether you like it or not. Yeah. Now, that I can respect and understand to a certain extent. Even if you're like the biggest fucking douchebag to walk the face of this earth, I can still understand and respect you for that. But with a liberal, they're just so unpredictable. And in fact, in a lot of ways, a liberal is a much bigger enemy of the working class than the conservatives. Granted, they're both enemies of the working class, but they're the more evil of the two evils. Because, like I was telling you, they're so unpredictable and anything and everything goes. Morals and ethics really just don't really apply to them.
Yeah.
Like, a liberal will go into much more deeper methods of exploitation than what a conservative will. And that's also what makes them so dangerous.
Well, a true progressive, they're pro-union, which is good. They're pro-social programs. They will help the homeless and the poor. And tax the rich and not the middle class. I mean, if you're an honest progressive, the more money you put back in the pocket of the little guy, the more you stimulate the economy. But I'm talking about conservatives that don't believe in any help for the lower 98%, like it was in the 19th century. You just perished,
Right.
So when you're talking about someone who can be trusted, totally, that would be a genuine progressive. Is that what you were saying before?
Well, like I was saying, in this country, there's not really any kind of real progressives. Like, in this country, I've never really seen a true progressive or even like a real socialist or communist. I mean, if you really want to be a true progressive, then you would really advocate for socialism, actually overthrowing capitalism and not really engaging in bourgeois parliamentarianism, which is what a lot of these Democrats who claim, they're progressives, Bernie Sanders claiming he's this social democrat and this, that, and the other. I mean, he's actually in bed with the establishment just as much as the rest of them. Just Bernie Sanders is like that perfect front guy. He appears as like a very kindly old man, wise, experienced, et cetera, et cetera. That's perfect for his image to where people would listen to him.
Yeah, he marched with Martin Luther King in the 60s and all that.
Yeah. And then whenever he actually says, we're going to have democratic socialism. Socialism in and itself is democratic. If you read the works of Marx, which actually really is socialism, then you would understand it's democratic. So by him saying he's a democratic socialist, it really just doesn't make any sense. It's just a very empty, hollow term.
So Scandinavia is probably the closest thing to Karl Marx's original teachings. The way Scandinavia is being run for decades.
Well, I guess in a certain sense, yes, because although they do have capitalism in their system, it's been kept at bay for quite a few years. And in fact, Norway was the first country to ever implement universal health care. The second country to do it was the Soviet Union.
They have a big salary too. Norway.
And in fact, in a lot of ways, Norway got their universal healthcare system ideas what they now have today, which they've now had for over 100 years. They did a lot of copying from the Soviet Union, from their neighbors. So they have that for their healthcare. They do have that for their education. And the fact, they've got so much money in their education that they're actually wanting foreigners to come to their country to get an education.
Oh wow!
The exact opposite of what the United States is doing.
Yeah. Well, they'll give you $800 a month for just being a citizen of Norway.
Exactly. But they also put a lot of time and effort into their healthcare system, their education system, and also their infrastructure. But the biggest thing that's very different from their approach versus what the Soviet Union, Maoist China, Cuba, and other various socialist and communist countries did was they do it through taxes. And we'll get to this here in just a moment. They do everything through taxes because they have a very, very high tax rate, even on the working class. And notice I keep saying working class and not the middle class, because the middle class is put there as a barrier by capitalism to show that, hey, capitalism is really not the rich versus the poor. It was a front to show people that, hey, we're really not as bad as Karl Marx really wants us to be portrayed as. Well, that front has now been completely destroyed. The wool that's been pulled over people's eyes has now been removed, and they see that the middle class really was just a front for capitalism to show that, hey, we're not evil. Don't overthrow us. Now that's gone. No, I'm sorry, but the devil has now made his appearance.
I have an interesting true story to tell you. I want your take on it or hunch. You're familiar with the organization Our Revolution, whose
right.
The president is Nina Turner, African-American woman. Bernie Sanders started it. She apparently runs it. She made her presence very strongly when she campaigned for Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez.
I thought it was Ocasio-Cortez, but
Ocasio. Yeah, I don't know. I can't. I have trouble remembering exotic names, but yeah, AOC. Okay, she campaigned for AOC. We have a progressive that is waiting, that ran for a governor of New Jersey, but didn't make it, that is anxiously looking forward to Our Revolution coming into New Jersey and campaigning for her. Her name is Lisa McCormick. That never happened. Every time Lisa runs, they never come in. Lisa McCormick is very Irish, Caucasian looking. She's lighter than me. She's light like Mr. Anonymous, V for Vendetta here. Guy Fawkes. She's light like him. No Nina Turner shows up. No Our Revolution shows up. That they don't have a strong presence in New Jersey, but they sure as hell went to New York to support AOC, who's Latina. So is it because Nina Turner, that she doesn't have enough? Lisa doesn't have enough melanin in her skin for Nina Turner to come and campaign for her. It's a possibility because there's a pattern. Because every time Our Revolution shows one of their progressives throughout the country that's campaigning and winning elections, it's like at least 75% or greater. I say greater, that they're people of color. So radical liberalism, they make guys like us wait at the back of the line for everything.
Right.
And I think that it's not fair because Lisa McCormick is a very hardworking, true progressive. I did a show with her, and she's like, she thinks a lot like you, and but she happens to be extremely Caucasian, and the only organization here is the American Democratic Socialists of America. They have chapters now all over the country.
Right.
They're in New Jersey, but they don't have a strong presence like Our Revolution does. But Our Revolution doesn't make themselves known in New Jersey. So I'm trying to look at patterns, and I noticed there's a pattern with Nina Turner, and this is a radical liberal would say, "Oh, how dare you criticize?" I mean, I was attacked on Twitter for that. How dare you criticize Nina Turner? Oh, all these the Democrats came out of the woodwork yelling at me. I says, "Hey, the proof is in the pudding, right? I mean, we don't have a strong presence of that organization in New Jersey. Why aren't Lisa McCormick is asking for their help when she campaigns? They're not showing up, but they show up for Latina Cortez
Right.
with no problem." So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Here in, like I was telling you, here in the United States, at most, we're probably going to get is some kind of social democracy. Yeah, we might get universal education. Yeah, we might get universal health care. But at the end of the day, it still remains, don't rebel against the system. The only reason why they're throwing out these concessions is, to a certain extent, they fear as though that, Americans are really getting pissed off. And it's not like this, typical, that they get pissed, we fix the problem, and then, it goes back to the way things were before. I know that we've had debates about this in the Marxist community as to whether or not the first world really is revolutionary or not, because in the works of Marx, he talked about that the revolutions were going to happen in the first world because the third world did not have any kind of revolutionary potential. But yet in reality, the revolutions were carried out in third world countries, and the first world became pacified. So, yeah, I'm going to go ahead and say right now, who say that, we bow down and worship Marx, Lenin, and Mao as if they're gods, that they know all and know it, nothing wrong, they don't do anything wrong. There, I just said it for once, they were wrong on something. Ooh.
Mao Zedong, that was a Chiang Kai-shek when they fled to Formosa.
Mm-hmm.
It became Taiwan. But yeah, I mean, well, they demonize Mao in documentaries.
Yeah.
They
demonized Marx, they demonized Engels, they demonized Lenin, Mao, Che Guevara, et cetera, and I'm just like, and the facts they throw out, well, I use facts loosely to try to criticize these people, they're just so idiotic.
Well, I had a neighbor growing up named Charlotte. She was Austrian.
Mm-hmm.
She used to call me, wave me over, and tell me stories. She would tell me that, you have Hollywood's version of World War II, and then you have me living there. And she pretty much said that the Jewish business owners refused to hire Gentiles.
Mm-hmm.
And it caused a lot of bad blood, animosity. She says there's always two sides to every story, and then there's the side that they want the public to hear.
Right.
Like with Roswell, with aliens.
Mm-hmm.
But look who controls Hollywood and retail and Wall Street and all this other crap. So I believe in patterns. I believe that if it looks, walks, and sounds like a duck, it is. Charlotte. Well, hey, my grandfather was like you politically, 100%. My uncle was a Republican and a corporate exec. Well, no, he was like vice president of Westinghouse at one time, and he used to tell me, don't listen to your grandfather. He's a pinko. He's a commie." It's about his own father. "He's a commie pinko. Don't listen to him." I says, yeah, but is it true or is it not true that Republicans are all for the rich? He says, well, to be honest with you, they are all for the rich. I says, well, then my grandfather's debate with you sounds a lot nicer. Of course, Uncle Phil didn't like that. Sounds a lot nicer than your debate. I said, I kind of like my grandfather's side to this all. And, I was disappointed. I didn't expect him to admit it. He said, well, yeah, the Republicans are for the rich. But at that time, I didn't know anything about trickle-down economics being a big lie. I didn't even hear the word trickle-down economics.
Yeah.
I didn't hear. All I remember is my grandmother crying her eyes out when Kennedy was assassinated. And I said, Grandma, why are you crying? She says President Kennedy was shot. So I remember that day. But you know, but it was totally a different world technologically. But
Right.
so my grandfather was to his son, the pink Okami. He was big corporate guy, my uncle, and they used to have these little debates when he used to come up from Maryland, and you know, for Thanksgiving and everything.
Right. Right.
But those were the days when women can afford to be homemakers and cook, and they cooked a lot of food during the holidays, and you ate good. And
Right.
that part I miss, but forget about now. You know, I don't think you're lucky if they know how to do laundry. But,
Right. We'll get back to one thing that we were talking about with like Scandinavian, how
Yeah.
they do things differently through taxes, and how they're doing it through social democracy. In a real socialist economy, if they really were like a real socialist country, they would not do everything through taxes. Here is how you would do it as a real socialist system. You know, we've been talking about it, but how does it actually be applied besides, you know, you overthrow your government, you install this new socialist government to advance communism. So how does it actually work? All right. So the simple economics of a socialist system goes like this. All right. So it may not really seem like it's really all that big of a deal, but if you think about it and you actually apply this, it's actually pretty amazing. Okay, take a worker. It can be any kind of worker, you know, a fast food worker, someone who works in a grocery store, a factory worker, et cetera, et cetera. All right, so they're paid a wage. So once they get paid or they make enough work or they do enough work to make their livable wage, so that, you know, they've earned their daily bread, so to say. After a certain point of them working, there is this thing called surplus value, i.e. profit. How you determine profit is like, you know, the cost of labor versus the cost of like wear and tear machinery, the cost of materials, et cetera, et cetera. Once you deduct all that, and then you also, like, you know, you have your overhead, things like that, that's what's left as profit. Now, in a capitalist system, profit goes to the bourgeoisie. And it goes to benefit the bourgeoisie and to benefit themselves through, you know, them getting better education, better healthcare, higher standard of living, et cetera, et cetera. But in a socialist system, it is completely different. Surplus value, known as profit, goes over to the state, and the state distributes it accordingly. They'll distribute so much to healthcare, they'll distribute so much to education, so much to infrastructure. And they also distribute it into utilities, because in the Soviet Union, Maoist China, Cuba, and even still today North Korea, you know, utilities are paid for by the government through the surplus value of labor. Henceforth, why the workers take home more money, because you're not taxed on your labor per se. You actually really get to keep what your daily bread is. It's just everything is dealt with through surplus value. Now, that may not really seem like a lot of money when you just do it with one worker, but if you do that across your whole entire economic system, it actually is the most practical.
yeah,
Because you actually have revenue for your government to function.
Yes, it's like it's like the soldier ant of the Amazon jungle. One ant means nothing, but a colony is unstoppable.
Right.
It's you notice how conservatives always mention on the media that socialism will send technology into the dark ages, that there won't be any technological advances without capitalism. They're always mentioning that on CNN.
But they're so hypocritical in that I guarantee you these exact same people are the ones who are supporting the attacks against Venezuela. I mean, granted, I don't like Nicolas Maduro and his social democratic BS, but it's not to the point to where I want to go into his country and overthrow him and destabilize his country.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't like the guy. I just don't like the way that he's doing things. and this very social democratic BS, trying to, legislate things through and try to, go through bodies like the UN, NATO, etc., to try to keep the United States at bay. But they're not really willing to take revolutionary action to, fully have a socialist revolution to where they have an actual formidable defense against the United States, like what Fidel Castro did with Cuba. So, yeah, they may be ramping up their military now in preparation for a potential United States invasion. But at the end of the day, Nicolas Maduro is not going to have the balls to step up and do what is necessary to keep the United States out of his country. And even if he did, he probably does not have any kind of balls to kick the United States out. And he also probably does not have the balls to kick OPEC out, because Venezuela is part of OPEC. They're an oil-producing nation, so it would make sense to subjugate Venezuela.
Just follow the money trail, like Jesse Ventura says. That's why the U.S. cares so much about Venezuela. Yeah.
But that's just because Venezuela does not toe their line. We don't see the United States military going in imperialistic style in these Middle Eastern nations like Saudi Arabia or Jordan or these other countries that produce oil, because they toe our line. We're in bed with them, even though the Saudi prince is basically just like ISIS, but with an actual government. Because you see, I don't want to deviate too much off of this, but just to show you how far imperialism has gone, not only in the United States, but the rest of the world, it has really, really fucked us up beyond recognition. Like, if Karl Marx were alive today and he saw just how bad capitalism was today, he would be like, holy shit, I knew it was going to get bad, but I didn't think it was going to get this bad. I think in some ways he underestimated capitalism. Because if he would have saw what it was like today and how the United States is and how imperialistic the United States is and also our allies are, he would have to write whole new works on everything just to explain it.
Yeah, like, but now Lenin, he overthrew the czars, right? The Romanovs.
Right. With the Bolshevik Revolution.
Yeah, the imperialism. And but the oligarch today, corporate fascism, I don't know how, it's not too far away from imperialism, feudalism,
But to touch more on like the current affairs of the United States, but how it's also affected the world. Seeing just how far capitalism has developed here in the United States is amazing. In a bad way. I'm not saying this in a good regard, because I'm just going to go ahead and say it now. The bourgeoisie have become so bourgeois, they've really just forgotten what it really means to be a bourgeoisie. And the proletariat has become so complacent that they just really don't understand really how to be a proletarian. For example, have you seen just how rich the rich have gotten, how poor the poor really have gotten, and how entrenched the liberal and conservative factions are here in the United States have gotten? They're so rich, and they've let exploitation go so far into the third world where they've pretty much almost bled the third world dry. They're running out of methods of exploitation to exploit the third world, because the third world is starting to stand up against the United States. So to protect them and their class interests, they're eventually going to have to turn those tools of oppression they've been using out in the third world here in the United States.
I mean,
we're already starting to see that right now.
Even the big fundraising organizations have to have a blood-sucking CEO. God knows why, but they do.
Exactly. And they're just like, we're just so rich, you can't do anything to us. Who's really out there to stop us from doing what we want to do?
Oh, use Jeff Bezos, Bozo Bezos with the dildo head. Use him as an example. I mean, crap. I mean, well, $15 an hour does not keep up with the high cost of living in any big city. I'm sorry, it sounds nice, but
it might around here, because the cost of living here in Tennessee is pretty low compared to the rest of the state.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about areas with high rents, and like my ex in San Diego, a 1-bedroom apartment can go for like 2,000.
Whoa.
Yeah, isn't that insane? Yeah, San Francisco has gotten extremely high. Of course, over here in Manhattan, well, not over here because I'm not crazy enough to give for a little chicken coop studio apartment. They want well over $2,000 in Midtown Manhattan. But I got lucky with a subsidized retirement building in an upscale New Jersey neighborhood. I got very lucky. I'll be moving there the end of May. But the point is, when you were talking about earlier about all of your money going towards bills with no surplus cash at all, we're talking about people that are struggling just to pay their bills,
Right.
which is horrible. Now, if you live near one of the big hoity-toity cities.
Oh yeah, we got those in Tennessee. They are known as Knoxville, Chattanooga, Nashville, and Memphis.
Yeah, like Mr. Chrisley's reality show. He God knows where he moved his family to now. I think he went from Georgia to Tennessee and Nashville, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, and but anyway, well, Tennessee, I'm going to guess, relies a lot on tourism.
Well, Tennessee used to be a really, really bad state in terms of the Christian evangelicals really had a strong hold in this state. But as time has progressed, more moderates have come in and have really, fixed a lot of the problems that the Christian evangelicals have created. The biggest thing that, I can gripe about Tennessee is although we don't pay any kind of state income tax, we just pay federal taxes, we have a flat 9.5% sales tax on everything. And I do mean everything: groceries, gas, alcohol, tobacco, etc. And yet we have this high level of poverty here in this state. You would think that, by cutting taxes and no one paying any kind of state level income tax would help. But in reality, it's really not.
Isn't it like Wolf County, Kentucky, people living in shacks, re-electing Mitch McConnell over and over, or Mississippi is a very poor state, but they're loaded with evangelicals.
I mean, the moderates are really having to do a lot of catch up here in this state. I mean, I like living here. I mean, the people here in my neighborhood, they're very nice people. Everybody knows everybody. And it's still one of the few neighborhoods that I know that I could think of where children can actually go out and play outside or go over to other people's houses and play with other people's children and not have to worry about it.
That's good. That's like old times.
Yeah. But there are some good things to living in this state. You actually do bring home more money per paycheck. Yeah. And they actually do have some pretty good wages here in the state if you get some good jobs. Like the city I live in Kingsport. If you live in the city, yeah, the cost of living is high, but I live out in the county, so the cost of living is cheaper.
Now Minnesota has been doing well under under a Democratic rule. Then all of a sudden, Wisconsin saw the light and they unloaded their Republicans. But yeah, I mean, Minnesota is an example of, and also some of the more progressive states like Colorado, Oregon, Washington that have legalized marijuana and smartened up. I mean, hemp. They're still struggling with that. That has to be like the #1 cash crop and probably the most important crop in the history of mankind. It's so versatile. It's incredibly versatile. It even, Japanese scientists has stated that it even absorbs and neutralizes a radiation from, like if they planted lots of hemp at Fukushima, it would absorb the radiation. There's that. byproducts of hemp, which goes on and on and on.
Yeah.
Hempcrete and hemp this and hemp that. Then you have, when they talk about the Green New Deal, they talk about always the same thing, solar and wind turbines, but they don't mention hydroelectric. I said on Twitter to Ocasio, I says, do you realize there are hydroelectric buoys that you put offshore, and when the water gets choppy, they produce electricity. They're buoys.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's a lot that could be done. My friends in the Philippines, I says, for God's sakes, you have over 7,000 islands in that country. It's a tropical archipelago. Why aren't you relying on solar energy and wind turbines? And it's the same old crap like with India. They have educated people, but they have lots of political corruption. They're, you know, what would you call them? Like military dictatorships or
yeah. In the Philippines, I've read different stories. Some say you can own guns. Some say guns were outright banned whenever the military dictatorship took over. I honestly don't know what to believe.
Yeah. My friend in Shanghai says, we don't have the murders like we hear on the news in the United States. Everybody's blowing each other away. We don't have guns and we don't have the violence here.
Haha.
Yeah, and that's what she's telling me.
This is the same argument that I hear about Japan, where Japan has very strict gun control, but yet there's very little gun violence. No, that's not really the case, because if you know anything about Japanese culture, they're not outwardly destructive. They're more inwardly destructive. They would rather kill themselves than kill other people.
Well, they have a Japanese mafia that has a stronghold throughout the entire country.
Yeah, the Yakuza.
Yep. The ones that they cut their pinky off or something. They have to say.
Yeah, so it's like whenever I hear this argument of like very strict gun control areas, how, you know, they reduce crime, et cetera, bullshit. Okay, so if that's what they're going to say, then I guarantee you that you're going to have a much higher violent crime rate through other means, like, you know, swords, knives, et cetera. And you're also going to have higher rates of suicide, because Japan has an extremely, extremely high rate of suicide, but yet they have very strict gun control. So the gun seems to really not be the problem in Japan.
Well, look at all the towns in the wild west, the mining towns and everything. The pioneers, they had a strict judicial system. You know, the system of justice was pretty strict. That's if, you know, the people running it were not like Boss Hogg. And, you know, I mean, and everybody owned guns because they had to. Yeah. They had to. And, but you can still have a society where there's gun ownership and still make sure that no one is above the law. Yeah. Well, get back on another topic we were talking about. I'm trying to think, where was it we were talking about? About 2009, the current state of the U.S. and the world of 2009.
So getting back to what we're talking about, just how far capitalism has developed in this country. Seeing what it really has done to us, and how, you know, the bourgeoisie have just become so complacent themselves, where it's like, yeah, we're rich, yeah, we're going to exploit you, but we're not going to do all these concessions for you to, you know, make you not want to overthrow us. You know, they really could give two fucks less about that now, it seems. Because, you know, where they've gotten so rich and their power is so entrenched, who really is out there to stop them? They themselves have become complacent, but that's also going to be their downfall, because they'll eventually destroy themselves. Now, the proletariat needs to get their ass out of complacency and realize that, you know, the way things are the way that things don't necessarily have to be. You know, capitalism was a system that was created by man, and man can overthrow it and destroy it. Right. Capitalism is not like this godly force from another ethereal plane of existence come here to rule over man and subjugate it forever. No, it's something we created, and it's something we can destroy. But getting back to how far capitalism has, you know, fucked up our country, it's really alienated us in a lot of different ways. And this is one thing Marx really talked about, is how alienating capitalism really is as a system. Yeah, you may think that, you're doing this for the betterment of yourself and society. No, you're really not. You're really just doing this to make the bourgeoisie richer and you poor. Sorry to burst your bubble, but that's the case. And I think we're coming to an understanding that we are realizing this now, that we're not really doing this for the betterment of society or for the betterment of ourselves. And with our alienation that we have here in the United States, but also the rest of the world, it's really fucking up our morality, our ethics. And that also explains why we have so much violence, especially gun violence, here in the United States. Because look at what the right wing is completely capable of doing. Where really has the right wing really, shunned using violence to do as they damn well please? And who really has stopped them? Who really has tried to step up and stop them? No one. You know why? Because there's not that left equivalency. See, I'm a pro-gun leftist. In fact, I own guns myself, and I'm tired of these right-wing motherfuckers thinking that they can use violence to subjugate other people in the ways they're trying to subjugate them. Like, trying to get out of tax evasion, get out of things like, being racist bigots, being sexist, things like that. And
they break up protesters.
And, attacking people just because they disagree with them.
Yeah, fascist stormtroopers.
Exactly. And there's no left equivalency to fight that. And that's what pisses me off, is I guarantee you, if there were leftists like me, real socialists who don't fear guns and don't advocate taking away guns, because it doesn't matter what system you live under, once guns are taken, you're screwed. So no matter what your definition of freedom is, once guns are taken, your freedom is gone. That is the last form of defense and the last line to protect you and your freedom.
Yeah, I agree. It's their intimidation tactics is exactly what we said before. It's fascism, in this case, corporate fascism, and they try to intimidate people. They now censorship on the media. I mean, on the internet. They're trying with that. The spying that's going on.
Mm-hmm.
Even private messages are spied upon. It just goes on and on. It's like,
I guess what they're saying is right. There is toxic masculinity, because the right acts very masculine, but the left acts very feminine.
Oh yeah, well they still are trying. They still think they're going to convert all of the Trump supporters by reasoning with them. You can't. There are people who have made up their mind concerning who they are, and there's no change in them. And then there are the brain cell deficient folks out there who will never get it. Then there's the fanatics, the fanatical people like the cultists, the zealots. They think they're going to win everybody over like a bunch of hipsters with the I love, like Barney the dinosaur. I love you, you love me. It's not going to happen.
Exactly.
And that's what I try to tell.
I guarantee you, if the right wing really had their way, they would be subjugating all of us by now. But you see, they're trying to subjugate us in ways that, no one should be subjugated to. And that's one thing that socialism advocates, is it is subjugation, but it's subjugation for the right reasons. Example, when I was telling you that, certain freedoms have to have reasonable restrictions placed upon to ensure that others don't get trampled on, that is what socialism is, and that's why the right hates it. Because socialism puts certain social and economic freedoms down to make sure that other people's freedoms are not trampled upon, i.e. things like, exploitation, to where the bourgeoisie cannot exploit you.
What about threatening journalists?
Yeah, threatening journalists. They say that, like, in the Soviet Union, there was no freedom of press. You couldn't disagree with the government. There could be no dissenting opinion from the government. But if you've read stories from the Soviet Union where journalists have wrote, yeah, they disagree with the government. They didn't get thrown in prison or gulags. They didn't get executed just because they disagree with the government.
You can't disagree with this guy. You get fired if you work for him. Exactly.
It's like all these arguments they're trying to say is the fault of socialism and communism, what these people did. It's happening right here by this motherfucker. And it's so stupid. And I hear this argument that, like, if socialism comes into place, that, we will have no social or no economic freedoms. This, that, and the other. And I'm like, are you really that fucking stupid? Because they'll throw out this argument of anyone who is in a gulag in a communist country or socialist country is because they just disagree with the government. Really? Or people were executed just because they disagreed with the government. Okay, so you're telling me that in countries like this, there was no such thing as crime. Nobody raped, nobody murdered, nobody stole, nobody committed any crimes. They were just thrown in gulags and executed by the thousands just for disagreeing with the government. Makes total fucking sense.
Unbelievable. Yeah, well, another thing that conservatives like to do is they like to shout you down, like when Kellyanne Conway is a guest on CNN. Let's say she's on the Chris Cuomo show. She won't let him get a word in. She just goes on and shouts. It gets loud. But that's what they do. They don't. Fairness is not in their vocabulary, or courtesy.
Yeah.
So it's like we were saying, they strong arm their ways upon you. They try to intimidate, and they're abound with greed and corruption, and everything is profit motivated.
That's why conservatives hate socialism so much. That's why socialism really is the enemy of conservatives, and vice versa. Because, to a conservative, the most amount of exploitation that you can produce, the better. And that's why they hate it, because in a socialist country, conservatism and liberalism are not going to be part of the media. I'm sorry, it's just not going to happen. Because that's what Gorbachev did with glasnost and perestroika. The Soviet Union was already going through a social democratic phase after Stalin had died and Khrushchev came into power. In fact, in a lot of ways, Khrushchev started this transition to social democracy, undermining the Central Committee of the Communist Party, undermining the one-party system, and undermining socialism in the country. Just Gorbachev was the one who sealed the deal, because they allowed liberalism back into the country. They allowed alternative media besides socialist media. And that's what led to its downfall. And that's what conservatives as well as liberals cannot stand, is that their garbage is not allowed in the media in a socialist or communist country, because they don't want that kind of bullshit. They really just don't, because they see that liberalism and conservatism is just a bunch of garbage. They see that it destroys any kind of socialist ideology, no matter where it sticks its teeth into.
Okay.
And they also don't want that as part of the media, because not only does it undermine socialism, it also corrupts not only the government, but also corrupts people.
Absolutely.
Because if you see what liberalism and conservatism has done to the American people and how idiotic it has turned us, you would see why stuff like that would be suppressed and not allowed.
Mm-hmm.
So if making sure that a population is not corrupted and a government is not corrupted, is really a bad thing, then you really need a reevaluation of your morals and ethics.
Yeah, I just wish more people read their political definitions in a dictionary and not mix them up, and realize it's a good foundation for. Americans wouldn't do it because they do everything based on emotion. Like when they go to the rallies, oh, that freaking song drives me nuts. Every time Trump shows up for a rally, I'm proud to be an American. At least I know I'm free. All that.
But are we really free? I mean, I hate to say it here in the United States. Seeing what freedoms that we have, we don't really have freedoms in this country. I'm sorry, we don't. We really don't.
Yeah.
Nothing is guaranteed as a right that cannot be either chipped at or just outright taken away from.
Well, what is that? What is that prediction or that saying that was it capitalism comes wrapped in a flag holding the cross, or was it conservative?
Nationalism.
Nationalism will come wrapped in the flag holding a cross.
Yes, because have you noticed just how nationalistic Donald Trump really is? Because, he's like that politician that George Carlin talked about. Politicians hide behind three things: the flag, the Bible, and children. No child left behind. Oh, really? But yet, you were talking about giving them a head start. Head start, left behind? Someone's losing some ground here. But,
it's like the brown shirts.
Right. Well, we got sidetracked on that, but we'll get back to it. Getting back to alienation, seeing how far the right wing has gone and how they're not really shy about using violence to push forth their agendas. I mean, the liberals just want to just bitch, moan, and complain. But that's the nannies of the liberals. Now, the liberals who are the oligarchs of liberals, you guarantee they will use guns to push forth their agendas.
Yeah. Yeah, the oligarchies, it's corporate fascism. They got the. What surprises me is how law enforcement and the military forget their roots, where they came from.
Yeah,
go against the very people that they grew up as.
Mm-hmm.
And I met a New York City police officer last night that told me they don't get paid much. They start off with a lot less than you think.
And then not only what alienation does to us as a human species, and what capitalism alienation has done to us, as I was saying, when we think we're doing this for the betterment of ourselves and society, we're really not. It's like that in all aspects in a capitalist society. Do you really think that someone who is a nurse or a paramedic or a police officer, firefighter, what have you, really are doing this for the betterment of themselves or society? No, we're not. Because you see, humans are they're neither innately good nor innately evil, but we have this desire to want to build. And capitalism gave us the ability to build, but only for a certain amount of time. Now, we really don't have the means to build. And the only thing really forward to keep us building or progressing is socialism.
Right.
And not only has it alienated us here in the United States, look at how alienated the rest of the world is. I mean, granted, in Europe, there wasn't really that much alienation because there's so much complacency. But if you look at it now, Europe is pretty alienated now. Because the EU and other various forces coming into Europe and destroying their social democracy that they've held on to for so long, it's insane. And then we got shit in the Middle East where we've got ISIS, who came out of the power gap that was left after Saddam being ousted from power. I mean, granted, Saddam Hussein was an evil, deplorable son of a bitch who really was evil. But at least he kept terrorists at bay because he didn't want competition against his terrorism. You were a terrorist for his government. You know, terrorism was negotiable. If you weren't a terrorist for his government, by God, he put you down, motherfucker.
Yeah, yeah. He also, you know, did a lot of cruel things. Well, like
Yeah.
with his sons, if they happen to like this girl, I heard they had the husband murdered or something, or the boyfriend murdered. All kinds of shenanigans.
I mean, granted, Saddam Hussein was an evil, deplorable person, but look at how imperialism has affected the Middle East, especially in Iraq. Because if you look at the way ISIS acts and the way Saudi Arabia acts, they're almost like this. The only difference is ISIS is a guerrilla terrorist group. ISIS is just a guerrilla terrorist group. Saudi Arabia is like that, but with an actual government, and that's what makes it scary.
Kleptocracy, right?
Yeah, but ISIS copied a lot of their ideology from Saudi Arabia because you know what is at the root of both ideologies? Wahhabism. Wahhabism is a ideology out of Islam that is very anti-imperialistic. It came out of the want to get rid of imperialism out of the Middle East, and we're seeing that now through ISIS. But Saudi Arabia has kind of forgotten about their Wahhabist ideology. But that's not to say that, you know, ISIS and Saudi Arabia are good people. No, they are not good people whatsoever. In fact, if there are ever ISIS terrorists that come here in the United States and try to kill me just because I'm an agnostic atheist and I'm white, you better believe I'm going to deal with them by any means necessary. And the Saudi king, what I would have done after 9/11 is I would have had an actual thorough investigation conducted, and then once I got all my evidence that I needed to show that Saudi Arabia was behind the attacks against America, I would have went to Congress, got a declaration of war, and within 1 week, I would have leveled that country, had all members of the Saudi government that were involved in 9/11 brought before military tribunals and executed, had all their money taken and distributed among the Saudi people.
Get those old B-52 bombers and drop tonnage, carpet bomb, whatever it takes.
Yeah. I really don't like to go to war because I know war costs lives, it costs money, and it costs time. So if I actually were to go to that extent, I would go through the ways that it's really supposed to be done. And hell, if need be, I'd go out on the battlefield myself.
Yeah. Now you have drones that are unmanned.
You know how they say that, like, you don't want to push a war unless you'd actually go fight it yourself. That's one that I would go fight myself. I would sign up and I would have done it, but I would not have been old enough.
What I want to know is all these by Al Qaeda, by ISIS, all these televised beheadings of captured European and or American troops. Well, where the hell is the SEAL Team 6 when these people were captured and possibly tortured and then eventually beheaded? I mean, they just...
There is one dark secret that the United States does not want to talk about ISIS. They also don't want to talk about it through other various terrorist groups like the Taliban. We funded and trained them.
Oh, it was sold arms, like when the late John McCain had a meeting with them, and there was an arms sale. Took place. Okay.
Yeah, because with imperialism, it recognizes no bounds to make money. Yeah, we're in bed with terrorists, but you have this war on terrorism at home. Makes sense, but yet it's also extremely contradictory because, like I said, capitalism is full of contradictions.
They don't care about collateral damage.
They really don't. I mean, they really honestly just do not care about collateral damage. But one thing I also would have made sure is if I would have gone in and destroyed Saudi Arabia, any innocent men, women, and children, I would have gotten them out of there as fast as possible. Because if I'm going to go to war, I'm going to go all-out war.
That's the only way to do it. I mean, quick, like blitzkrieg style, quick, fast, and complete, and not a war that lasts for many years. Just
Yeah, I would have got the military in as well as special forces. Start taking key areas for stronghold. Get any and all innocent men, women, and children out of there. Get them to safety, because I can't guarantee their safety if I was to go all out war on this country. So go in, get as many innocent men, women, and children out of there as I could, and I would minimize collateral damage, because I do like to adhere to the laws of war and not break the Geneva Convention. Even though I think the United States and other countries should just get rid of it, but that's beside the point. I still would at least adhere to the laws of war. Yeah, you better believe the Saudi king, the Saudi princes, and any other government officials that were behind 9/11, you bet your ass I would have them here in the United States faster than that.
Yeah, but because they were kissing their ass because of the oil, and using that as an excuse. Because this guy, it's not that he cares about the general population paying a lot more for oil. It's that he's making money off of the Saudis' oil.
And you know what that inadvertently would make him? That would make him an accessory to terrorism, because the Saudis actually do carry out terrorism themselves. They terrorize their own people.
And Republicans are protecting his ass big time. And I think the Russians have a lot of dirt on him. I think there's something really, I'm telling you, they have to screw him into the ground like a corkscrew when he finally passes away. He's unbelievably, he's all the above, not just a pathological liar.
Yeah. But getting back to imperialism, it's just seeing what imperialism has done, not only in the United States, but here in the rest of the world. It makes a lot more sense to have a socialist world, because in socialism, we would not be going to wars like this. We would not be going to wars over profit. We actually went to war, it would be over something worth going to war over, like actually getting rid of actual terrorists who are trying to destroy socialism. And not even for like legitimate reasons. Like, them destroying socialism because, it doesn't allow exploitation. Or they want to destroy socialism because, they don't get to have their 100% freedom, or they don't get to have the freedoms that they want. No, I'm sorry. Socialism puts people down like that. People who are like that, they are crushed like that.
Yeah, they get smited.
Yeah, they get smited.
They do, like they talked about in the Old Testament of the Bible, smited.
Exactly.
So for people that are real, that are not cultists, that are real theologians, the Christian Bible sounds very socialist. When you like for those that read it and know of it, the ways of socialism. I mean, conservatives are complete opposite.
Yeah.
Of even like Buddhism or any non-offensive peace-loving religion. I mean, conservatives are counterfeits. They have their own cult. Their religion is actually the love of money.
In a lot of ways, religion and socialism are very antagonistical, because Marx was an atheist, Engels was an atheist, Lenin was an atheist, Mao was an atheist, Che Guevara was a Marxist humanist, but humanism is also atheistic. So, yeah. I mean, religion is not going to look at this through an atheistic perspective, because it's antagonistical to their interest.
But do you think those gentlemen would have kept extraterrestrial visits and crashes and thus a secret?
Like, what do you mean?
Like, in other words, if not a communist or socialist government that was actually a military dictatorship. Let's say like a true socialist government. If there was an alien crash and they confiscated, wreckage and bodies, or let's say there was some like Roswell. Let's say a couple of them were alive, and they had them. I mean, would they, under that government, would they just make it totally public and just let their media know about it? And being that they were atheists, I mean, I don't see any reason to keep.
I say they probably would, because in the Soviet Union, the Russian Orthodoxy had a lot of antagonisms and a lot of disdain and hatred for the Soviet government. And it was the other way around, too, because they wanted to halt progress of socialism. That's why, you know, when people talk about, you know, there could be like Christian socialism or Muslim socialism or Jewish socialism, things like that. I tend to facepalm because the religions themselves are just so antagonistical to this that I just really don't see how it can be implemented.
Because the Russian Orthodox Church, like Saint Basil's Cathedral, and all, like the Greeks have the Greek Orthodox. I understand.
Yeah, because I honestly think they would, just because it would allow for progress of humanity in a lot of different ways. Because what it would actually mean to meet an extraterrestrial, because you don't know what they could teach us. I mean, for all we know, they could bring us the biggest advancement that humanity has ever seen, but then yet they could also come here to completely destroy us at the same time. So in dealing with extraterrestrials, I would do it on a case-by-case basis. If they said, we are here to come in peace, we are here to help you advance as a species, we're going to give you technologies to, you know, give you better health care, help you live longer, how to help you, you know, have better agriculture, better infrastructure, things like that, then I'd say, sure, come on in, we welcome you. But if they came here to want to destroy us and subjugate us to some kind of galactic empire, then I would say, nope, get the hell away from us.
Yeah, if they were non-malicious and they were here to save our civilization or to speed up our advancement, let's say, deliberately, if they had good intent.
Yes, exactly.
You know, that'd be fantastic, but we don't really know. That's why they think that these shadow people that seem to appear from other dimensions, interdimensional travel, that they are like a lot of psychic mediums claim that they believe they're aliens, because they say they're not demonic, they're aliens, and that's the only practical way you can travel that far in the galaxy, through wormholes and interdimensional travel.
I mean, I really would like to meet an extraterrestrial race, because this may also sound weird, and it's probably a terminology you've never heard of, is I do consider myself an exopolitician. An exopolitician is I don't know how long this term has been around for, but in layman's terms, it's someone who is actually willing to work with people not of this world. That should just go to show you just how advanced I am. I'm willing to go beyond my planet to work with other people.
Well, you think like Nikola Tesla with the third eye, the pineal gland or pineal gland.
Because I will go ahead and say right now, I think they're out there. In fact, I think they're here among us.
Oh, I believe it. Look at look at the alien craft that is seen entering the ocean and exiting the ocean. And I mean, what about Antarctica? There are tunnels at the top of peaks, you know, where alien craft have been seen to exit. Australian outback, some aboriginals have seen them often. Oh, they're definitely around and present for probably thousands of years. I mean, modern construction, architect, you know, modern construction mechanism machines cannot duplicate the building, the elevation of blocks that weigh that many tons, and with such precision fitting that you can't even get a razor blade in between two blocks.
And I'm ready to meet him. I won't to have an extraterrestrial race come here already, because I'm ready to meet someone else besides my species. I want to see someone I can actually, carry on intelligent conversation with that aren't human, that could actually probably teach us something that we probably did not know. Because who knows what kind of advanced technologies that extraterrestrials would have. I'd say some of the technologies they have are pretty damn cool, and I would love to see it.
I mean,
I wouldn't know how to work it unless I was shown how to work it, but still.
I mean, look at how far we've come. They're growing organs from DNA in laboratories. Of course, you have to be wealthy to have an organ that your body will accept. Instead of going on a waiting list for a donor. They're actually growing organs now for you. Let's say you can afford it. There in Seoul, South Korea, there is the top clinic in the world that is cloning just about anything if you provide them with a perfect DNA structure.
Right.
Well,
there is one more thing, because I don't know how much time we have allotted, so I'll go ahead and I'll brush on one other thing. We can talk about this for the last little bit. There is only really one country in the world that really has stood up to the United States and is actually keeping them at bay. And you're probably going to be surprised when I say this, but North Korea, or the Democratic People's Republic of Korea. They are like the last real, somewhat socialist country that is left on this planet.
Yeah, well, the satellite footage has shown that they have at least one of a specific class of submarine that can fire a missile vertically, that like with the 25-foot sail, and they deny they have it, but they have one, and I guess it's the threat of them creeping up with that submarine on a major U.S. city and firing.
I mean, North Korea, or the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, they hate us for a very specific reason, and this ties in with the current state of affairs of the United States, but also the rest of the world. This is a country that actually can affect the rest of the world because they do have nuclear weapons and they aren't afraid to use them, and they're not going to give them up, no matter how we try to sanction them, no matter how we try to subjugate them. They are not going to give them up, no matter how hard we try. That just goes to show you the people of the Democratic People's Republic of Korea they are that hell-bent on showing not only the United States but the rest of the world that the United States and imperialism can be stood up to.
Well, you're right. They are doing it.
And they can stand up to anybody. I mean, there are countries out there that want to make peace and make amends with North Korea. I'll use it interchangeably because there are countries out there, like I was saying, they want to make peace with them because they don't want them on their enemies list. Because have you noticed that the problems that North Koreans have with other countries are the ones that want to have imperialistic wars with them? Like, North Korea really does not have a problem with Scandinavia. I mean, granted, they may not like them in certain regards and other, but at least, they're not threatening them and threatening them with nuclear war.
Now, only the imperialistic, right-wing capitalist nations, they have a problem, and that's not Scandinavia, not even Germany.
But it's one thing to talk about, them standing up to imperialism, but the question is, why do they want to stand up to imperialism? Well, to put it in layman's terms, North Korea, or the colony known as Korea, they have been a colony for most of their history. Like 99% of their history, they have been a colony to either China or Japan. When they were a colony of China, the Chinese were brutal to them. And then whenever Japan took over that part of China and subjugated Korea to Imperial Japan and made Korea a colony of Japan, the Japanese people were brutal to them. So whenever World War II ended and, Korea was divided up between the communist North and the free market South, a young revolutionary named Kim Il-sung wanted to unite Korea because he saw what was going to be coming of this. He saw, since that the United States is at our doorstep, nothing good is going to be coming of this, because at this point, this is when they started doing the war against communism, the Cold War. So at that moment, he knew that it was do or die for the Korean people, that he had to make sure that we could have our own independence as a country. Otherwise, we're going to remain a colony for the rest of our entire history. So the Soviet Union came to help this young revolutionary named Kim Il-sung out, and Stalin and Kim Il-sung were really good buddies, so to speak. And whenever he started doing his teachings in North Korea in the late 1940s, people loved him because what he advocated was true independence, to where we could actually be our own autonomous country. And he had an idea on how to do it. He wanted to do it in a socialistic manner, but he wanted to do it in a very specific way known as Juche, because the state ideology of North Korea is still Juche, which are the teachings of Kim Il-sung, that everything is to be done for and by the people. Kind of sounds like socialism, but in the Korean people's sense. So that way we could have our own autonomous nation. And it spread through the North like you would not believe. Now, when it came time for the Korean War, and the policy of containment really put a damper in that, and we had the armistice between the North and South, and then also between the armistice between North Korea and the United States. You're not going to get rid of this ideology out of North Korea no matter how hard you try, because they have it set in their mind. They are not going to be a part of any imperialistic empire.
Right.
They didn't want it with China. They don't want it with Japan. And they sure as hell do not want it with the United States. And they're not going to give that up, because since someone came along and showed them how to have an independent nation, they're not going to give it up. And that is why, they made it so abundantly clear to get nuclear weapons, because they knew if they had nuclear weapons, no country would invade them. Because take, for example, China and Russia. China and Russia are capitalists, but yet they're also imperialistic. Do you see Russia or China wanting to invade them? They're actually trying to keep them on their good side, because although they do have vested interest in the country, it would not make sense for them to try to go in and topple the North Korean government. Because after there was the armistice, Kim Il-sung did great things for the North Korean country. I mean, he rebuilt the country from the ground up after war. He brought housing, he brought healthcare, he brought education, he brought infrastructure, he brought jobs. He did so many great things, and that is why he is so revered in the country, was because he is the founding father of the country. And to disrespect him or say something extremely insultive about him is like insulting the whole country, because the whole country thinks like him.
Right.
Because they have the want and desire to remain independent. So of course they're going to think like him, because he's the one that brought this to them.
Mm-hmm.
Now, granted, his son Kim Jong-il, as crazy as he was, he made things worse to a certain extent, but at the same time, he actually made things a little bit better, because after the Soviet Union was dissolved in 1991, North Korea lost a lot of their economical trade with the country, because the Soviet Union and North Korea, they did a lot of economic trading with each other. And the Soviet Union really helped out North Korea in that regard in terms of building up their country. So now they've lost that. So now they have to really become really independent. They cannot really rely upon anyone, so they really had to implement Juche in its entirety and become self-reliant. That's another thing about Juche is it's extremely self-reliant. You know, so that way they don't have to rely upon anyone else, because after the Soviet Union collapsed, and was really about the only people they could trust. They could trust Maoist China to a certain extent because Maoist China did come in and help them, but once Mao got outed from power and his Gang of Four was outed from power and Xi Jinping came in with capitalism in the 1980s, they couldn't trust China, so there was another trading ally gone. And over time, even though the Soviet Union was helping them, come 1991, they lost all that. So after the Soviet Union had fell, and then anywhere there was any kind of socialist or communist outreaches or remnants of this so-called evil empire, they isolated them from the rest of the world, sanctioned them, and tried to subjugate them. And under Kim Jong-il, he did the best that he could for what he was given, because as Kim Il-sung got older, he really couldn't do as much in the country as what he used to. I think it was like sometime in the, I'm trying to think, it was like sometime in like the 70s, he had to start doing more and more because his father Kim Il-sung could not really do the work that he was doing. So when the arduous march came in the 90s, yeah, there was starvation, there was famines, and there was this, that, and the other, but at the end, he got them through it. And that is why, even to a certain extent, today, you know, despite how crazy and idiotic Kim Jong-il was, he at least kept the country from being subjugated as a colony from the rest of the world.
Okay.
That is why he's looked up to in reverent regard to a certain extent, even though the rest of the world may not. I mean, I could go on quite a bit about how insane idiotic Kim Jong-il was, but that I got to respect him for. Now, getting to Kim Jong-un, in a lot of ways, the North Korean people think that Kim Jong-un is Kim Il-sung reincarnated, because even though the country itself is not really religious, they do have Buddhism in their country to a great extent. And Buddhism does believe in reincarnation. So for them to say they think that he is their founding father reincarnated, I mean, it's possible. I mean, he looks a lot like him, and he's trying to go away from the ideology that Kim Jong-il had brought to the country, which I didn't really talk about that, but I'll touch on just a little bit, because now it's kind of really gone by the wayside. It's not really all that practical or important in the country anymore. But during the arduous march under Kim Jong-il's reign, they went away from Juche to Songan. Songan was a military-first policy. That's where they put like so much of their money and time into their military, because they were under the threat of invasion for so long. That was the time in their country where they really felt they were the most vulnerable and really needed a strong military to thwart any invasion. But now that they've got nuclear weapons, Songan really is just it's not practical to have in the country anymore. Granted, if something else happens, it may come back. Right now, it's not practical. But now that Kim Jong-un is really getting back to Juche, you'll notice that actually the country itself is doing really good.
Okay.
Because when the Soviet Union was still around, North Korea actually had a higher standard of living as compared to the South. And then, you know, once the Soviet Union fell and, you know, all these sanctions were placed against the country and this, that, and the other, South Korea's standard of living really went up. But it seems like now South Korea's standard of living is going down and North Korea's is going up. Because if you look at the way things are, I mean, you can get information about the country. It's not this some hermit country that's so isolated from the rest of the world that the North Korean people don't know anything about the outside world, that, you know, we know nothing about what goes on in the country and this, that, and the other. Bullshit. I guarantee you that the North Korean people know what's going on outside of their country, because I have seen their state-run TV. They do have videos of it here on YouTube. It's it wasn't accessed through the United States because the United States suppresses a lot of the information that comes out of this country because we're still technically at war. It comes through other countries. But since YouTube is not just in the United States, it's in the whole, it affects the whole world unless it's banned in certain countries, we can get information from it. So if you go online, you can find their news media and see what they're talking about. They talk about what's going on in the outside world. I mean, for Christ's sake. So of course they're going to know what's going on in the outside world. They don't live in this total isolated bubble to where they don't know anything. I mean, they know something.
So they get international news, and they probably get more truth about the United States than the American people get.
Okay, well, this also kind of contradicts their argument. Okay, if North Korea is so isolated and the people don't know anything about what's going on outside their country, then why would they know what the hell is going on with Kim Jong-un in the United States? They're contradicting themselves.
Okay.
Because last time I checked, the United States is outside of the North Korean border.
Yeah, that's true. Very true. But listen, we're gonna wrap this up.
Yeah.
And thank you for a tremendous education, not only for the show, but for the people that will view it. And this has been a blockbuster after hours, so to speak, political show.
Right.
And, you know, thank you for joining me for Progressive Discussions.
You're welcome.
Finally, real hardcore education is, and the real truths are being laid upon people out there,
Yeah.
the world over, actually, because we're on YouTube.
Mhm.
And,
I've already got the theme for the next topic of discussion.
cool. That'd be great. This is going on the Facebook Progressive Discussions. It'll automatically be on Twitter because I have the accounts joined.
Just out of curiosity, like, what has been the reception of the last show?
You know, I haven't even checked. I haven't even checked it.
Because I noticed on YouTube it's got views, but like no comments.
Yeah, well, nobody's commented tonight. But if we did something silly, ridiculous, and asinine, we would have tons of people commenting. When it comes to actually learning something that's part of reality,
Mm-hmm.
I'm serious. Like if we did nothing but stupid slapstick humor and sound effects, we would have, or reviews.
Right.
We would have a lot of comments. But
Right.
what happens is when I do the old school fitness related shows with Jeff Zambello, we don't necessarily get comments when we go live, but we get a lot of viewers afterwards because they probably know that if they come on live and they talk shit, that they know that knowing how Jeff is, you know, a big tough power lifter that used to be a paratrooper, jump out of planes, that he would tear them a new asshole. So maybe they're a little intimidated. But you know, it's live, but it's pre-recorded, and it'll be out there.
All right.
I'm still trying to understand why the more idiotic the video, the more attention it gets, you know. But
I mean, I don't really do this for views, or I really could care about how many views or likes, comments it really could get. It's about the message.
And it's about the message, not with keyboard courage, like people that just go on social media and type every day, you know, long paragraphs of, you know, and show their brilliance in private or through typing.
Right.
We are going as public as we can get without actually having a rally somewhere.
Yeah. If we had a rally like this and people actually showed up, the government would probably view us as too radical and would shut it down very quickly. Because anytime there's a mention of like real socialism or communism arming the masses and the masses rising up, it's crushed like that.
We'll have people yelling at, right on, yes, 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 we'll take up arms. All right. You know, like we wouldn't be able to get the amount of volume of educational information out there like we did tonight, because we have people screaming and, you know, Gary Owens, Gary Owens,
yes,
James and Gary, and then people will start throwing things, and then there'll be counter protesting. Yeah, it'll be a mess. It'll be, but yeah, no, they'll shut us down.
Yeah, they would.
Occupy Wall Street was the funniest thing. They had no real bona fide leader. You know, they were just like willy nilly, like camping out and partying and blocking the sidewalk and preventing people from getting to work. And the whole thing was a fiasco.
Mm-hmm.
It could have been a lot bigger than it was, but there was no like solid, bona fide, sound leadership behind them. I mean,
exactly.
You know, now, I mean, what I always wondered, the group Anonymous that happened to adopt the Guy Fawkes mask, and Julian Assange, and he's definitely in the news, you know, and he's part of journalism, whether you like him or not.
Mm-hmm.
So Edward Snowden, they wanted to arrest him. To me, he's another hero that exposed people. You know, why couldn't they really expose the culprits in the 2016 election? Okay, and I know this could be another show, but they only did so much up until the election itself in November, and then all of a sudden it went quiet. Like between Julian Assange and Anonymous, they were putting out a lot of online information about many things, and it's just like either the mainstream media rejected it, and Washington rejected it and didn't want anything to go public,
mm-hmm.
or their organizations were just full of hot air, or it's probably the first theory that they had the information that was, for the most part, like not embraced by the mainstream media, because there were a lot of articles coming out of WikiLeaks and Anonymous.
Yeah,
during 2016.
People were just like, he sold out the United States. He sold out the United States. How? I mean, if you want my honest opinion, I don't listen to that, because they're more focused on discrediting the messenger rather than actually listening to the message that he put out there. I mean, he exposed the war crimes of the United States, or the empire known as the United States. So if selling out the empire in that regard is a bad thing, then I fail to see what the real problem is. Because if we really are that big of an empire and we do that horrible of things, then we deserve to be sold out. We deserve to be gotten rid of and taken care of by any means necessary. We really do. Because if we are committing war crimes in other countries, and yet we don't face those crimes for any amount, it's just, it really pisses me off. So when they're so like, oh, he sold out the United States, this, that, and the other, I'm like, get your fucking patriotism out of here and look at what he actually did.
He exposed the truth.
Expose the truth. And if you cannot handle the truth, then go live in somewhere where the truth doesn't matter. Go live under a rock where you can have your own world and this, that, and the other, and not really be in touch with reality.
Live in a cave and sit on a stalagmite.
Yeah, sit on a cave and sit on a stalagmite. Well, sit in a cave and sit on a stalagmite.
Well, stalactites come from the ceiling, right? stalagmites, the dripping. Okay, stalagmites. I think I'm right.
Yeah. Well, what stalag something or another. Let's go stalag something or another.
Stalag yourself. Go stalag yourself, people.
Just stalag yourself.
Yeah, but anyway,
and allow your teeth to just get so horrible and just get so horrible of toothaches that you just sit there and bitch, moan, and complain when all your teeth fall out. Sit there in the cave and gum grits the rest of your life.
Like Austin Powers with the snaggly, the stereotypical British teeth.
I will go ahead and admit now I have bad teeth, but it's because of where I used to drink a lot of pop and it ate the enamel away on my teeth.
Yeah.
And I've been wanting to go and get them fixed, but because of where the cost of dentistry is so high in this fucking country, I can't afford them. Because, to be honest, I am kind of image conscious to a certain extent, and this kind of just irks me and makes me look bad.
Well, the word dentistry irks me not because of pain, because the needles are designed where I did not feel not even a pinch when I got the Novocaine, and the drilling I didn't feel either. It's the cost that drills me. You know, I mean, come on, for one root canal and a crown, it's now like over $1,700. A friend of mine had to pay $1,700 for
insurance wouldn't cover it.
Well, it covers it, but it's not like, you know, a regular primary care doctor visit or a specialist visit where it pays for almost the entire bill. It maybe 80% of the dentistry is paid for, but you know, I mean,
you know how much they wanted out of pocket, and insurance would not cover this. You know how much they wanted out of pocket to fix my teeth?
How much?
$10,000. That is right. To fix all the dental problems I have with my teeth, $10,000.
What is it about? They're just as bad as hospitals, you know, what they charge insurance companies, what they rip Medicare off for, number one.
Yeah, and insurance said, we are not covering. You want this work, you pay out of pocket. I'm like, where the hell you want me to fork out 10 grand? At one point I had 10 grand, but it had to go to other things.
Well, I have 2 molars missing, and I'm going to wait. Now they're advertising these high-tech implants. I'm going to wait until they become really high-tech and the price comes down, because...
You know what I really, really would like to do? If I had the money, I would just get all my teeth pulled and just have dentures or have implants. Because my teeth, I don't like them. And the reason why I don't like them is where I used to drink a lot of pop, it's eaten away at the enamel at a lot of them, and it's really misshapen and misformed and really done a lot of stuff to them.
Is it periodontal disease or what is it?
No, because I'll tell you why. Both of my parents smoked whenever I was in my mother's womb, and nicotine actually affects the mother's teeth, but also affects the fetus's teeth as well. It also even though they're not grown in, it still affects them in development while they're up in your gums. My baby teeth were just fine, but when my adult pair came in, that is when I started having all of the problems. Because what nicotine does is it drains a lot of vital nutrition away from your teeth. Because my mom and my dad's teeth and my teeth were horrible. Like, my mom has very brittle teeth, and she's lost quite a few of them due to her smoking and also her drinking a lot of pop, and same with my dad. Hell, when my dad died, he didn't hardly have a tooth in his head.
You know what people don't realize also?
What?
When a baby's born, it's very important for the baby to receive mother's milk, at least for the first week, because
I was not breastfed at all.
Because colostrum, I wasn't either. Colostrum is what develops a human being's immune system, but it only occurs in mother's milk for the first several days after a baby's born. Then it dissipates. So every mammal has colostrum right after it's born for that week. So just for that 1 week, breastfeed the kid so he has a strong immune system when he's an adult. I think I got formula. I don't think I was ever.
Yeah, I got formula, but I have a very strong immune system. Like, I hardly ever get sick. And if I do get sick, it's so very mild and toned down. Like, the last time I really got sick was like 7 years ago.
Well, then you do have a hereditary strong immune system.
Well, it's been boosted because I take vitamins and supplements.
You take a lot of C, like high omega C.
Well, I take a Centrum Adults multivitamin. I take a magnesium supplement, and I take an over-the-counter stomach medication because I do have stomach problems.
You mean like acid reflux or something?
I get that from my dad. My dad had really bad acid reflux, and he had to be on Nexium because it was eroding so bad up into his throat that his esophagus was becoming really eroded. Mine was like that for a certain amount of time, and that's the reason why my voice is the way that it is, because if you notice, my voice sounds kind of two-toned. It doesn't really have a lot of clarity to it, and there's not really a defined pitch or tone to it.
That's pretty clear to me. I mean,
because, like, the reason why it sounds the way that it sounds is both of my parents smoked. Whenever I was little, they would not go outside. So I've been exposed to well over 20 plus years secondhand smoke. I'm also a former smoker myself. I vape, and I've got a lot of acid reflux problems. That's really contributed to the sound of my voice because if you notice, it's got bassiness to it, but at the same time, it's got other pitches and tones in with it. It doesn't really have a defined clarity or tone to it. It sounds like it's kind of all over the place. My voice is really messed up.
Yeah, but I mean, when you were using your image,
yeah,
you had an ideal, what they call an ideal radio voiceover voice. Right. Your voice really came across very impressively, resonated, you know. And
but now that people actually see the face behind the voice,
no, you have a very studious, educated look to you. I mean, you don't, you know, you look well, actually, you know, on video. I'm glad you did this.
Actually, what you see now is, I'll go ahead and I'll show you. I'm actually losing weight and I'm getting buff.
Oh wow, Metallica. Cool.
I used to be like 250 pounds. Now what am I down to now? I used to be 250 pounds, but now I'm down to like 225. But I'm getting mass up here in my upper body, and I'm actually getting muscles again.
Are you staying off of the carbs? Because Atkins will strip body fat like nothing.
Nope. What I'm doing is I'm being more active, and I'm eating a much more balanced diet.
Okay.
I'm moderating more in what I'm doing.
I switched to the Nature's Way Alive, you know, the multivitamin with the phytonutrients in it. I did that and a lot of C. Hey, you know, it'd be cool if somebody really wanted to, like, was going to be in the next Batman movie as a villain, get serrated titanium shark's teeth implants as canines. Serrated titanium for sinking their teeth into
Get back to what I was telling you with my dentistry. $10,000 what they wanted to fix everything with my teeth.
10 grand.
Yeah, 10 grand. I had that at one point, but that had to go to other things. That had to go to getting this house, making sure this house was paid off, dealing with my dad's affairs after he died, making sure that our cars were paid for, our cars were completely repaired, and that they were paid off. So that way, you know, everything that needed to be done with the house, paying it off, making sure that everything needed to be dealt with and needed to be dealt with was taken care of. So I still have it, but it's been allocated to other things like.
But at a principle, 10 grand. I mean, give me a break. It should. This is why we need your system of government. 10 grand. I mean, you should not have to be sent to the poorhouse just to get adequate healthcare taken care of, you know, and
yeah. And that's one other good thing about socialism is competition and trade in all regards is completely eliminated from the country. So there is no competition and trade over stuff like healthcare or education, which, if you think about it, if there's no competition or trade and, you know, it's just provided as a basic human need, then it actually brings costs down and can actually be much more cost effective.
Well, look at a friend of mine. She has multiple sclerosis. Her medication costs 25 grand a year, I believe. 25 grand for a damn drug that probably costs them, you know, chicken scratch to manufacture. You know, I mean, well, you know how big pharma is. It's like, you know, what the guy they threw in, remember the guy with the sarcastic smile? Prison for,
apparently he's not doing so well in prison, by the way.
Oh, that dude from that was in where is it? His office was in Midtown Manhattan, and he was like smirking at the judge, the price gouger.
Yeah, he's not doing very well in prison. In fact, he's had to be, I think he actually had to be moved from certain prisons because while he was locked up, there were some prisoners who wanted to kill him.
Well, because they knew how he was. They knew who he was. And yeah, I know Jeffrey Dahmer didn't last that long. But anyway, yeah, I mean, just by looking at him, that smug, arrogant look on his face, and he's smiling at the judge, almost laughing at him. You know, it's like at least Bernard Madoff, at least he looked upset, you know, when he was being sentenced. You know, but this kid, this punk, whatever, Bernard.
I don't feel sorry for them. In fact, them being in prison does no justice because if you really think about it, what these people have done have gone far beyond what one serial killer or one serial rapist or one serial thief has done. Because by them, you know, stealing money and jacking up prices so high where people can't afford them, to me, that's much more worse and much more cold-blooded in terms of killing someone than going out and stabbing them or shooting them, because they're in a suit and tie and doing that, and they can get away with it. And the people like them are still getting away with it.
This is premeditated, selfish evil is what it is.
Yeah, premeditated, selfish evil. And in fact, by them doing this, I would have made sure that these people got the death penalty, because by them jacking up the prices and stealing from people the way they have, they literally set people up to be killed and to be murdered.
Well, they were exploiting a person's terminal illness or serious.
So you better believe I would have articulated my case as a prosecutor and got them either put in prison for the rest of their life or just gotten the death penalty for them, because in my eyes, these people are much, much more evil than a serial killer like who's a very famous serial killer who actually really went out.
Bundy? Was it?
Ted Bundy was an evil, deplorable person, but still, you know, what he did was evil. What these people are doing, they're doing on a much, much bigger scale and on a much, much more eviler scale.
Yeah, I used to debate with my late talk show partner, William J. Eisenman, PhD, God rest his soul. He used to say, you know, the sociopaths, we have to feel sorry for them, psychiatric patients. I said, no sympathy. No sympathy. I says, that's the easy way out. Feel sorry for them. They need a good shrink. Yeah, right. No. Well, he was
sorry for him.
Yeah, he was. Sometimes he tend to be an extreme liberal. You know?
I'll leave you with one more thought, and then I guess we'll go ahead and wrap this up. If I don't feel sorry for these people that are in prison right now, like the two people you just mentioned, and I don't feel sorry for Ted Bundy or Jeffrey Dahmer, then that should just go to show you that I have some pretty strong morals and ethics. Because, granted, you know, Ted Bundy was evil in his own way, but he didn't do stuff like this to other people.
This punk, he planned it. It's totally premeditated. what he did, the price gouging and exploiting the sick, and Bernard Madoff, all premeditated and planned out.
Yeah, exactly. So to me, people like that, they either deserve to be thrown in a gulag for the rest of their life and worked to death until the day they die, or they should just be condemned to death, given the death penalty, and a bullet between their eyes. Because people like that have no place on this earth and in this society. They really don't.
Yeah, I would use my little fantasy method called death by pickling. Just put them in a big vat up to their neck of pickling spices and vinegar, and just let them slowly turn into a prune or something. You know, just like slower than crucifixion.
No, for me, I like to keep things as cost effective as possible. So that would kind of take up too much time and too much money.
All that vinegar and pickling spice. Yeah, you're right. Yes.
So 85 cents for one bullet to put right here and put them out of their misery and the rest of society's misery. I'd rather go that approach.
And the piranha fish, you know, you got to keep them healthy and filtrate the water. Yeah, I get it. In other words, quick, boom, one bullet.
I'm not doing this to be like some kind of humanitarian I like to make it to where they don't suffer. I mean, even though I support the death penalty and at the end they would still receive it, before they actually went to it, I'd make sure they suffered.
Well, you give them lecture after lecture after lecture, telling them how rotten they are, make them feel really miserable, and then torment them with words, and then finally the bullet between the eyes. You know, I mean,
the way I'll do it is, even though I support the death penalty, and at the end, you know, bullet between the eyes, just get it done and over with. The best way to do it is show them their crimes they committed, and then show how their crimes can be fixed. Because you know how you could really get under Jeff Bezos' skin is while he's awaiting the death penalty on death row, all of the medication that he overpriced and price gouged, give them to the people who really need them, either for free or extremely low cost. That would torment him in ways that you would not believe.
And compile a video of all the sick people that relied on that medication, that couldn't afford it, couldn't get it, and that were sent to the poorhouse because they had to clean out their life savings to get the drug. But to compile a video of all the damage that their evil greed has done, and just keep on playing that video over and over and over, making them watch it until they're like, going bonkers. Just to really lay a heavy guilt trip on them.
Not to sound sick, but if you do something like that, it really gets them riled up for when they actually go to face their death penalty sentence. In a lot of ways, it's kind of satisfying to see, when people are sent to the death penalty, regardless of how they're going to be executed, seeing the fear in their eyes of actually dying, and seeing how, this is how they're going to have to atone for everything, and this, that, and the other, and, they can't commit these crimes anymore, that they have no one else to tell their crimes to, this, that, and the other, even though they may have been recorded, they can't personally tell it themselves. I mean, it eats away at them.
I mean, the finalization of death.
Yeah.
Oh, I got you now. That's suffering in itself. But anyway, listen, you have a good night.
I will.
It's been a pleasure.
It's been a pleasure. Have a good one.
All right. Thank you.